We have with us State Senator George Borrello, Jamestown Republican. His district goes all the way to Alfred and Almond, Allegheny County. Senator, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be back on with you, Brian.
Senator Borrello, let's start out with mail-in voting. You were quoted in a recent Wall Street Journal article about that. Tell us about that.
Well, back in 2021, the people of New York State rejected the idea of what they refer to as no-excuse absentee balloting, which is anyone can request an absentee ballot for any reason at all. This was put to a constitutional amendment. It was a ballot initiative, and it failed overwhelmingly in New York State. But at the end of session here in the State Senate and in the Assembly, the very last days of session, the Democrats put forth a bill that does exactly that, mail-in balloting. And they passed it over, across party lines, strictly party lines. Democrats only voted for it. I had a debate with the bill sponsor, Senator Gianaris, and said, "Isn't this just like the ballot initiative that failed?" And his response was, "Oh no, this has to do with early voting by mail." So, again, this is just the arrogance of the Democratic Party in New York State that feels that they're smarter than the people of New York State when they make a decision on something, and it's certainly about them trying to manipulate our election system. So I'm calling on Governor Kathy Hochul to veto this bill because it goes against the will of the people of New York State, who overwhelmingly have voted against the idea of anyone for any reason getting an absentee ballot and overwhelming the system in doing so.
Senator, they're also changing the election days, so that the village and town elections and city elections are on the same exact day and date and time that the state Senate and state assembly and governor's race elections are?
Yes, they want to move our local elections to state and federal election dates. Literally no one is asking for this, but once again, the Democrats see this as an opportunity to manipulate the system. And our local elections should be in those off years because people want to focus on local issues, things that are important to them at the local level. Whether it's county races, town, village. By the way, this bill does not apply to New York City, where the folks that sponsored this bill, are from. This does not apply to New York City. Now imagine this ballot during a presidential year, like 2024, with all of these races. For the U.S. Senate, the state Senate, the President of the United States, all of that clogging up the airwaves and everything else, and basically this is going to lead to local races being ignored, and those issues that are important to local people really not getting the focus and attention that they deserve. This is just another travesty and another more proof that one-party rule in New York State is truly ruining our state.
Are they moving school board elections too?
Well, that is not on the list currently. There will still be some exceptions. By the way, there are some races that cannot be moved because of the constitution of the state. Therefore, sheriff's races, district attorney races will still occur in those off years. So the whole idea of having a savings is a lie because you're still going to have to conduct those elections anyway. There'll just be fewer races on those ballots. So there are several exceptions to this rule, but once again, we're talking about the Democrats trying to force their will upon the people of New York State, even when they don't want it.
Interesting. Senator Borrello, the Clean Slate Act, the Democrats put it forward and said this is a great thing because, somebody gets out of jail and, maybe they spent a lot of time in jail or prison, reading books and had a change of heart, a conversion of some sort, and they're not going to go out and do whatever they were doing before. So I'm wondering, the objections are coming from the conservative Republicans. They say there's more to it than just giving somebody a fresh start.
Absolutely. I think most of us believe in giving someone a second chance, but. And I myself, as an employer, have employed people who were formerly incarcerated. But I knew full well going in what their background was. And in fact, most of the people that are formerly incarcerated that are employed in small businesses like mine. The big corporations have ones that have had policies against hiring people that have that have prison backgrounds, that have criminal backgrounds. So now the idea is that we're going to seal the records. And we're not just talking about minor offenses. You're talking about things like manslaughter, domestic violence convictions, people that have been in prison multiple times for violent offenses. Those records will be sealed and not available, whether it's providing a job, housing options. People will not be able to check those criminal backgrounds. This is very concerning to a number of people. And I think that there was a way to do this. But this, once again, with the far-left, radical, progressive agenda of the New York State Legislature, this is far. It goes way too far. The reality is that this can be multiple offenses that will be sealed. So while I believe in a second chance, I don't believe in a 22nd chance, and that's what this horrific bill does. And once again, calling on the governor to apply some common sense and veto that bill.
Yeah, I remember when bail reform went through the party line, I guess I'll say, from the New York City Democrats was that this is a good thing because rich kids keep getting away with all kinds of crimes and the poor do to a lot of time in jail. And I remember people like Assemblyman Phil Palmisano saying that bail reform didn't do anything to change that particular problem.
No, and in fact, the reality is that bail reform has sent us backwards. It's made New York State much more violent, and you have career criminals that are released, on their own recognizance with an appearance ticket, like it was a traffic violation, and then going out and reoffending multiple times. You're seeing the rash of so many crimes, particularly in our cities. Shoplifting, in some cases very violent shoplifting, that's occurring multiple times because there is no consequences. So bail reform did nothing to address any kind of injustices that were perceived out there, but it did in fact make New York State a far more dangerous place to live.
Yes, and on the note about repeat offenders, it seems like a lot of these repeat offenders also have drug addiction problems. So Steuben County Sheriff Jim Mallard recently was on a Newsmaker show, and he questioned the wisdom of pushing marijuana as much as they are at the state level.
Well, and look, when I was county executive in Chautauqua County, where I worked with the sheriff and our local, and our mental health department to bring treatment to our jails in the county. And in fact, we even had treatment that allowed people to be out basically on parole as long as they continue to get treatment. But when someone doesn't go to jail, they're not going to get that treatment. And you're right, so many times people commit crimes because of addiction issues that they have. And yet we should give people the treatment that they need. Instead, we're letting them go out not only to not receive treatment, but also to commit multiple more crimes and to be a further burden on society and a danger to others. And that's the tragedy of bail reform, is that people were being helped, whether it be in prison or wherever else, they were being helped, and now they are not.
Senator Borrello, kind of an interesting thing, this e-battery bike fire situation. This is something that the Democrats and the Republicans both seem to agree on. I've heard about it from upstate Republicans, Democrats. U.S. Senator Schumer and Gillibrand have talked about this e-battery bike fire. In fact, that's even made the national news different times when they've had bad bike fires in New York City. What's going on there?
Well, first of all, let's remember one thing, that this is another example of this irresponsible push to electrify everything in New York State, and that we're doing so at such a rapid pace with technology that's just not proven and not reliable. This is another example. These e-bikes certainly are popular a lot of places, but whether it's an e-bike or whether it's a electric car, when those batteries start on fire, they are nearly impossible to put out. I remember hearing a story about a Prius that was caught on fire in Los Angeles and literally burned for days. They could not put the fire out. So this is a very dangerous scenario. All of these batteries are made in China, and the standards, the safety standards, are just not there. And that's really the issue here. We are promoting all of this whole idea of we're going to electrify everything at any cost, and we're not really paying attention to where these things are coming from. I know Assemblyman Phil Palmisano talks about the slave labor, the child labor that's used to produce these electric batteries and other items, solar panels. We are certainly throwing out everything that we believe morally as Americans in order to achieve this ridiculous goal of so-called going green.
Talking to State Senator George Borrello. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about offshore wind for Lake Erie and pesticides and other issues. Stay with us.
For an Allstate agent, providing protection that fits your life is something they take, well, personally. Allstate agents are committed to learning about your needs and helping to personalize protection to meet them. From bundling your auto and home insurance with ease to evaluating optional coverage based on your protection needs, your Allstate agent can help build an insurance proposal that fits your life. Are you in good hands? Contact the Hornell Allstate Agency of Michelle Cornell Herbert at 607-324-5611 today for a free quote. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Allstate Property and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
And specials today at the Classic Cafe, Main Street, Hornell. City-style cheeseburger, garbage plates, macaroni, salad, fries, cheeseburgers, fresh mozzarella, cheese panini sandwiches with tomatoes and pasta on Italian bread. Southern Pecan Specialty Toss Salad Soup of the Day at the Classic Cafe, Main Street, Hornell. Buffalo Chicken Soup, Classic Cafe, Main Street, Hornell, 607-661-4854 to call ahead. Back with State Senator George Borrello. Let's talk a little bit about the pesticide issue, Senator, with the Birds and Bees Protection Act. From what I remember doing a news story on that a few days ago, what you said was this pesticide or the chemicals being sprayed really are not as bad as some on the far left out of New York City are making it sound like. Am I correct there?
Well, here's what it is. A long time ago, farmers went away from, just dumping pesticides on their crops. Instead, they went to seeds that are micro-coated with just a little bit of a pesticide. And that's really the issue here. This bill, which is sponsored by Senator Brad Hoylman out of Manhattan, he's going to tell farmers what's best for them. What it does is it bans these, what they call neonic seeds that are coated with this. And he claims that's because it is a threat to pollinators, birds and bees. That's why it's called the Birds and Bees Bill. But the reality is that there is no scientific proof that there is an impact directly. In fact, it points to the opposite. And we have issues with pollinators like bees and that are being impacted, but mostly it's by other things, diseases, predators, and so forth. This is a responsible way for farmers to be able to grow crops, keep those yields up, making sure that they are protected from disease. And instead, we have this push now for New York State to be the only state that would ban the use of these seeds. And what does that mean? That means that likely the seeds will just not be there. There's no way that these big companies that produce these seeds are going to make special seeds, boutique seeds, just for New York State, especially because New York State, while those things like the grains that they're talking about banning are incredibly important to those farmers, because most farmers grow grains to feed their livestock. But as far as a global use, New York State's a very small percentage. So I have a lot of concerns. But most importantly, when the FDA, when the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation deem these things as safe, but somehow politicians out of New York City think that they're not, that's the real concern here. We are seeing the chipping away of our agriculture industry by these progressive politicians out of New York City that really have no idea where their food comes from, and certainly have no idea what the impact will be for these laws. It's all about trying to prove that New York State is most progressive state in the nation, and they do so at a tremendous cost to our economy.
I remember former Republican State Senator George Winter, maybe it was like 2008 or 9, and we were talking about the New York City state lawmakers and agriculture. He said, as far as some of these guys in New York City know, that milk just comes from the store. They don't they don't know the whole process of farming, and that the source are cows. Senator, you have a post on your Facebook page about cows being cool, and you talk about dairy in New York State. Anything going on there in the dairy world that you want to talk about?
Well, dairy is very big in New York State. It's the number one export for us, or I should say the number one product, for our agriculture is dairy. I'm proud to represent the biggest dairy-producing state in New York State, Wyoming County, county in New York State. Wyoming County is the biggest dairy-producing county, and so dairy is important. And we found out during the pandemic how critically important things like milk are to our community. And when we had farmers dumping milk, meanwhile you have people going without it, we really realized how fragile our food supply chain is. The dairy industry continues to be challenged, not by climate change like my colleagues like to claim, and not even as much by labor costs and material costs. The biggest threat to New York State agriculture in general, particularly to the dairy industry, is bad government policy largely out of New York City, and that's the biggest threat to our dairy industry. But yet they continue to be resilient, and they continue to produce. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue to bring attention to the fact that New York's number one industry is indeed agriculture, and we have to continue to support it. And like you said, most of my colleagues have no idea where their food comes from. They think it comes from the store. They don't understand what it takes to get that food to them until all of a sudden they don't have it, like we experienced during the pandemic. Then they realize how critically important it is. And unfortunately, we've forgotten that lesson not long after the pandemic has ended.
Senator Borrello, Nyserda, New York State's agency for approving energy projects. You are going up against them, I believe, over the issue of wind turbines in Lake Erie. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been fighting this battle for a long time, the idea of putting industrial wind turbines into our Great Lakes. Let me also point out that Lake Erie in particular is the source of drinking water for more than 11 million people. New York State, in our area of the lake, we do a lot to protect the lake, to protect the ecology of the lake, to protect not just the drinking water, but everything else that supports Lake Erie. But somehow, politicians, once again based out of New York City, feel that in order to this virtue signaling nonsense is going to place industrial wind turbines into our water. And the bottom line is no one can really explain to me why. I don't like wind turbines anywhere, but the wind turbines on land, the cost of them, it's many multiples more to place them in water, like they're trying to do on Long Island. It's many multiples more to produce them, and then the electricity that is produced by those is more than double the cost of wind turbines on land, and about 5 times the cost of traditional forms of energy. So the question is why? Why are we going to take these great risks? Why are we going to spend multiple billions of dollars? Are we out of land? No, we are not. So this is, again, trying to prove that New York State is somehow the leader in climate change, and this is just a fallacy. It is a taxpayer-funded boondoggle, as are all of these so-called green energy projects. But in this case, we're talking about a direct threat to the drinking water of millions of people and to the important economic impact that Lake Erie has on New York State's economy. So this Nyserda study, which took more than a year and cost more than $1 million, came back and said, no, don't do this. The risks are too great. They are unknown, and we really don't need to do this. But after touting the idea of Nyserda's study, the Democrats said, well, let's wait and see on this study when I introduced a bill that would ban industrial wind turbines in any freshwater body in New York State. Then the study came back, and they said, oh, well, we don't really know if we trust this study, and the Federal Department of Energy says differently. It's a joke. And again, it's being pushed by New York City far-left radicals they now want to impose their will like they have, not just on the people of the state, but risking, again, the drinking water of millions of people in several states and in Canada. So this is a bad idea that keeps coming back around. We got a reprieve from this Nyserda study, and we'll continue to push back and make sure that this does not happen.
The story up on EmpireReportNewYork.com, which we source a lot in our news department here at WLEA. Story about transmission lines going from downstate Long Island area into upstate. It was announced and apparently approved by the NYSIO, the New York Independent Systems Operators, that are going to be sending putting transmission lines in from Long Island Sound and other parts of downstate into upstate New York, it says, although the article does not specify, from what I've read, where in upstate New York the transmission lines are going. Question, Senator Borrello, what do you think of this idea of all these government agencies, like Nyserda, making these decisions? Do they have the right to do that? Being energy-related boards and panels, or are they bypassing the legislature in some ways?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. First and foremost, keep in mind that the New York State Legislature, on party lines, passed this climate, the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was creating this all of these radical proposals. The Climate Action Council, created by that statute, which ended up creating essentially a roadmap of bad ideas. That's what they are following. They are trying to essentially, follow the Climate Action Council's scoping plan. Even though we've been able to dismantle that and show what a joke it is, show that there has been no cost-benefit analysis, show that it's going to have absolutely no impact on greenhouse gas emissions globally, and yet despite all that, it has empowered these agencies. Now, I will say that these agencies often go too far and use this legislation as an excuse. We start talking about the transmission lines that right now are going to be disrupting the folks on Long Island to try and build these transmission lines from this offshore wind project in Long Island Sound. And they are ignoring local zoning laws. They are ignoring the will of the people, including the elected officials down there. They are certainly bypassing a lot of normal DEC protocols when it comes to environmental protections. And this is all justified by the fact that we are in a climate crisis. When you define something as an existential threat to humanity, you can justify doing a lot of really bad things in the process. And that's, unfortunately, what the far left and the leadership of the Democratic Party in New York State right now is doing. They're justifying a lot of really harmful things in order to address the so-called climate crisis. And whether you think of this crisis or not, we should not be doing things that are ultimately harmful. The whole idea that we should destroy our environment in order to save the planet is ludicrous. And that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing that being played out on Long Island and everywhere else across New York State.
Senator, I do want to ask you one more question. We have about 60 seconds left. The migrants getting bussed up from New York City, the Allegheny County chairman, legislative chairman Brooke Harris, put out a statement the other day saying that the state of emergency is over in Allegheny County, and as far as he knew, there were no migrants bussed up to any of the hotels or motels or anywhere in Allegheny County. I'm wondering, in the last minute or so we have left, did any of the migrants come to Cattaraugus or Chautauqua County, part of your district?
We've not seen any of these bus loads from New York City. Certainly there were other migrants that came directly from the border to New York State, and they have certainly, we've had some of them in some of our rural counties. But as of right now, even though the governor has the ability to place them in state-owned facilities like college dorms in our SUNY campuses, so far they've only gone to, for the most part, places that have said that they would accept them. But there are places that do not want them that have been getting them, like Rockland County and others. So really, this is about New York City and their continued sanctuary city status. You cannot call something a crisis and demand $1 billion New York State taxpayer dollars when you have welcomed this. This has been my continuing issue. The New York City Council needs to rescind their sanctuary city status. What they're saying is, if you come to New York State, if you came to the United States illegally, we will protect you. We will protect you from federal authorities. We will feed you. We will house you. We will take care of you. And that is what a sanctuary status means. New York City and New York State need to rescind the sanctuary city status and the sanctuary state status. And those of us that didn't ask for this should not be paying for it, and nor should we have to deal with the burden. And that's the real issue here.
Senator Borrello, it's too bad for the migrants. They didn't make their way to Olean. They could have gone to the Beef and Barrel.
One of my favorite places.
Yeah, Taste of Pizza. There's a lot of nice places there in Little Olean. Senator Borrello, got to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Senator. That was great.